After Hitler's Germany unleashed the Second World War in 1939, another strictly confidential operation was introduced on the territories under German influence. It was called Final Solution of the Jewish Question. A group of Jews from small, Nazi-allied Slovakia attempted the impossible, stopping it. This so-called working group participated by means of bribes in stopping the deportations from Slovakia, devised the unheeded Europe plan for saving the remaining Jews in all of Europe, while at the same time informing the free world about the true meaning of the term final solution. In 1944, only one country remained untouched by the mass liquidation of all Jews. It was Admiral Horthy's Hungary. Even as Hitler's soldiers marched into Hungary and roamed the streets of Budapest in March of that year, almost 1 million Hungarian Jews felt safe. Among them were tens of thousands of Jewish refugees from surrounding countries. All were to be herded into ghettos for a short time and then deported to Poland, where the most efficient death factory, Auschwitz-Birkenau, awaited them. One of the Jewish refugees in Hungary was Ernest Stern.
When the Germans invaded Hungary, and suddenly whatever in Slovakia took 2 or 3 years, to register and to start. Everything happened there within days. So we decided there's no future there. The only thing was to go back to Slovakia.
With the onset of deportations from Hungary, Rabbi Weissmandl and Gysi Fleischmann, representatives of the working group, turned to the wealthy American Jewry with yet another plea for help.
The deportations from Hungary began yesterday. 12,000 people daily are sent to Auschwitz, where they are gassed. We need money, lots of money. With your money we can get false papers, salvation for thousands. Bunkers will be built, hiding places with provisions for several months. With your money, Jewish children will be placed in Christian families and people will be smuggled to safety. Stop discussing the budgets and send us money right now.
Faced with the events in Hungary, the working group of Bratislava also attempted to revive the Europe plan, the plan to bribe German Nazis responsible for the final solution. The negotiations with SS Hauptsturmführer Dieter Wislicenyi, who was now stationed in Hungary, were renewed. Perec Reves, a refugee from Slovakia, was at that time working with the Hungarian Rescue Committee.
Tak ty návrhy poznáte, viete, všetko to začalo s tým Weissmandlem a Gysi, ten európsky plán, ktorý potom zaspal 1943 roku, ale tady sa znovu objevil, lebo v Bratislavie poslali s tým Wislicenyi, toho Wislicenyiho poslali aj k tomu Freudigerovi. Ešte niekde, neviem, to byla tretia, ale to bolo privátne, akcionistám. A ten Wislicenyi pochopil veľmi rýchle, že to spojení s zahraničným to je len v našich rukách. Tak sa to dostalo Joel Brandovi. Samozrejme, to bolo neuveriteľné. Eichmann to byl pro náš Lucifer, to Satan, to se nedá vypívať. To jméno člověk měl kolena se mu potrástli, když se mluví, kdo to je Eichmann. a naraz Eichmann prosí Branda. Tak jsme mluvili, no co to může být? Může to být, že to je nějaká pasť? Ano, ale proč? My jsme nikdo. My nemáme v Maďarsku žádný vliv na nic. Tam jsou ty dvě silné náboženské obce a uznané vedení židovstva. Tak proč právě od nás?
That was the point in Hungary. The Orthodox didn't work together closely. Like when it started, the deportation, they were also completely divided, and one blames now the other. But in Slovakia, that was the good thing, that they worked together, all fractions, whatever they should be.
Szóval ez az 5 hétről Szlovákiában. Ezt nem tudom pontosan, hogy ki közölte ezt velünk, hogy lehet a németekkel tárgyalni, fizetni nekik, és akkor lehet valamit mégis elérni, ami az ember, a zsidó életet jelent. És így kezdődött aztán a tárgyalás a németekkel. Szóval először voltak, akik Magyarországon voltak, azok voltak a Wehrmachtnak az emberei, és amikor a németek megszállták Magyarországot, akkor a Wehrmachtot leváltották az SS-nek az emberei, és így került aztán Eichmann és a bandája kapcsolatban velünk.
Hanse Brand was one of the leading personalities of the Hungarian Rescue Committee. Together with her husband, Joel Brand, she conducted many negotiations with the SS. When in May of 1944 the first deportations from Hungary started, the Red Army was already at the eastern border of Hungary. The Anglo-American allies were stationed at Monte Cassino, halfway up the Apennine Peninsula.
Szóval ez volt Joelnak a megbízatása, hogy menjen tárgyalni Isztambulba, hogy 10 000 teherautót, és akkor ők életbe hagyják a 1 millió magyar zsidót, és adnak 100 000-et előlegnek. És ezzel ment el Joel Isztambulba. És én úgy ismerkedtem meg az Eichmannnal, hogy amikor Joel a tárgyalásokat Eichmannnal befejezte, akkor mondta, hogy hozza föl a feleségét, és akkor bemutatott engemet, és akkor Eichmann közölte velem, hogy én a 2 gyerekkel ott maradok Tusznak. És hogy tudjam meg, hogy ami elmegy Joel ebben a feladattal, ez a Reichnek a titka, a német állam titka, és erről nekem nem szabad senkivel beszélni, és nem szabad nekem erről senkinek semmit sem mondani.
The instruction to Eichmann came from Himmler. That I know for absolutely sure, absolutely certain. So this was highest level contacts. And my view is that the central task there was not that of Joel Brandt, but of Bandi Gross. Precisely because he was a little smuggler and criminal and so on. Precisely because of that. He was charged with creating a situation in Switzerland where high officials of the SS would meet in the first instance with high officers of the American Office of Strategic Services, the spy agency of the Americans, in order to prepare or lay the ground for a separate peace between Germany and America. And if that didn't work, well, there was Brandt and this crazy offer of 10,000 trucks and so on for 1 million Jews.
Double or triple agents employed to work in neutral countries for 2 or more enemy parties at the same time are one of the less researched phenomena of World War II. People like Bandy Gross acted not only as couriers and smugglers, but also as spies or provocateurs. Bandy Gross, nicknamed Gerd, is one of the few agents whose real name is known to us. He was at the disposal of leaders of the Palestine Zionist movement, as well as of the Hungarian military intelligence and the German Abwehr. After the occupation of Hungary, he changed bosses again and became an agent of the Sicherheitsdienst SD, the intelligence and security service of the SS.
Joel prišiel do Istanbulu a nemal turecké vízum. Tak tí Nemci mu dali falošný pas. Eugen Band. Nemecké lietadlo. On tam príde. Malo čakať Chaim. To myslel, že to je Chaim Weizmann, a to bol Chaim Barlas. A není víza. Barlas odišiel a tí Turci mu povedali, vy sa pekne vrátite. Aj Grossovi to povedali. Vrátite sa s najbližším lietadlom. Tak Brandt bol zúfalý, však vrátiť sa z takej situácie k tomu Eichmannovi, no tak celá tá fantázia o tom svetovom židovstve, jak si tí Nemci svojej vlastnej propagande verili. A my s nimi, aj my sme už začali veriť, aj my sme boli obeť tejto ich propagandy do určitej miery, lebo sme tiež precenili tie možnosti, ktoré má svetové židovstvo v tejto veci robiť.
Despite the availability of reports on the murder of the majority of European Jews, the representatives of official organizations of the free world were at a loss to understand that even if Brandt's mission to Istanbul was a German swindle, all that could be lost in the transaction, a transaction that could purchase the lives of 1 million defenseless Jews, was just money, a sum worth 10,000 trucks. One truck could buy the hope that 100 people would live. Unfortunately, the negotiations were labeled as treason and undermining of the Allied war effort. Ill-starred Joel Brandt was eventually arrested by the British police and forced to observe the unfolding of the Hungarian nightmare from a jail cell in Cairo. His role in negotiations with Adolf Eichmann was assumed by Rudolf Kastner.
És akkor jött, hogy de ahhoz kell nekünk valamit bebizonyítani, hogy a németek valóban csinálnak valamit, és akkor a vidéki városokból fölhoztak körülbelül 1000 nem tudom hány embert, köztük 300 nem tudom mennyit Kolozsvárról, és így jött létre a transport, hogy bizonyítani, hogy mutatni, hogy ők komolyan gondolták, hogy akarják a zsidókat életben tartani. És akkor ment Rezső, összeszedtük a transport, szóval akkor már annak híre, hogy és 350 helyet eladtunk, hogy megfizessük a németeknek, amit kérnek érte, mert őnekik is kellett valamit felmutatni a fölötteseknek, hogy nem, mert akkor már a németeknek a nyelve kilógott minden vonalon.
Bol tam nejakých 30 rabínov. Do toho sestavoval, tam bylo ten Komoj a bol to ten Offenbach, to bol pokladník, veľmi slušný človek. A potom ten predseda, tí predsedovia aj tých náboženských a ešte niekoľko ľudí, ja všetkých som nepoznal. Ale ja myslím, že oni sa snažili udelať nejaký taký profil toho židovstva, ktoré bol určite cenný materiál.
In the end, one train, the so-called Kastner train, was sent to Switzerland. It was to serve the same purpose as the children's transport from Theresienstadt, organized by André Steiner a year earlier. To prove that the negotiations with the Jews were not a German trick, but that the highest circles in Berlin were interested in their success. Himmler still hoped that with the help of the almighty Jewish lobby, he would be able to sign a separate peace treaty with the US, dispose of Hitler, and together with America conquer Stalin's Soviet Union.
And I think they were prepared to let some Jews go. And in fact, they did. Not only the famous Kastner train of 1,684 people, but I believe from the documents that I saw that these negotiations were one of the reasons, not the only one, but one of the reasons for Himmler's order not to deport the Jews of Budapest. You know, it was all prepared. They were going to be deported in 2 days' time. This is August 25, 1944. And it was stopped at the very last moment. And the Nazis in Budapest didn't understand why they were stopped. One of the reasons for that were these negotiations, I believe. And then there were these 15,000 Hungarian Jews who were deported from Debrecen and Sopron and so on to Strasshof near Vienna, and not to Auschwitz, with their families. And most of them, not all of them, but most of them survived. So these are concrete results which really shouldn't have happened, because there was really no chance of saving Jews. And yet there was some that was saved.
Because of the position taken by the free world, the possibilities of rescue offered by direct negotiations with the Germans were for the most part left unexplored. As a result, the majority of Hungarian Jews were given no chance.
To whom you've already referred, the approximately 450,000.
Sie wurden restlos nach Auschwitz gebracht und dort der Endlösung zugeführt.
Do you mean they were killed?
Ja.
In the second half of 1944, it was apparent that Germany was going to lose the war. Nonetheless, the continuation of deportations of Hungarian Jews had a higher priority than supplying soldiers on the collapsing front. Rescue activities during the last days of the Budapest ghetto had many heroes. Among them was Raoul Wallenberg, a Swedish diplomat, and Charles Lutz, a Swiss consul. They saved thousands of Jews by issuing them protective papers. But while Wallenberg and Lutz are hailed as righteous among the nations, another hero of rescue, a Jew named Kastner, whose negotiations saved tens of thousands of people, was accused of collaboration. After the war, an Israeli court labeled him a man who sold his soul to Satan, and soon after Kastner was murdered by an unknown assassin on a Tel Aviv street. Slovak national uprising started on August 29, 1944. the Eastern Front was drawing near Slovakia. Support of Tisso's regime was minimal, not only among civilians, but also within the army. Whole garrisons switched sides and joined the partisans. The goal was a clear and unconditional rejection of the Nazi Slovak state. The gates of Jewish labor camps were opened. Some of the freed prisoners immediately entered the battle. In Nováky, an independent Jewish partisan brigade was formed. But a majority of Jews had nowhere to go. Their properties had long ago been confiscated, their homes occupied by new owners. In order to crush the uprising, special SS units were brought to Slovakia from Germany. Stating strategic reasons, Germans occupied all of Slovakia. First, its east to block the Red Army advance. Then slowly and from all sides they descended upon the center of the uprising, the town of Banská Bystrica. In the surrounding mountains, bloody battles were fought over every inch of territory. Savage atrocities were committed. Some Jews who escaped into the mountains together with the partisans were burnt alive in the Kremnička lime kiln. There was no fighting in Nitra. The local garrison did not join the uprising. The town was quiet until the last centers of resistance were eliminated. Immediately afterwards, SS Hauptsturmführer Alois Brunner was deployed to Slovakia with orders to swiftly dispose of the remaining Slovak Jews for good. With the liquidation of the Slovak national uprising, the Bratislava working group was disbanded. Rabbi Weissmandl and Gizi Fleischmann attempted in vain to contact the new representative of the enemy. The end of the uprising also brought about the end of the Nitra Yeshiva, the last Jewish religious school in all of Europe. William Levy is one of the very few survivors of the yeshiva's final days.
Deportation started again, the German came in. Whatever agreement they had was cancelled and deportation started again. So we tried to hit ourselves. Again, go to bunkers and go to... I had a brother there, and because he was very religious, he wouldn't pray without going, immerse himself in the mikveh before he prayed. So he went and hid himself next to there was a river in Nitra, there's a river called Nitra. So he hid himself in the bushes there. And they found him and he was killed, he was shot. He wasn't shot. First of all, they took him and immersed him in water and held his head down until he was dead. Then they took him out and shot him in his face.
Mass arrests of remaining Slovak Jews started on Yom Kippur, one of the most sacred days on the Jewish calendar. Alois Brunner turned the former labor camp in Sereď into a concentration camp for Jews about to be deported to Poland. Members of the working group still tried to reverse the situation by advocating the return of the camp to its former labor status, arguing in terms of the economic advantages of having the Jews' labor in Slovakia.
So the day after Yom Kippur in the morning, my Weissmandl and Gysi Fleischmann had to report to the SS, to the Gestapo house, to see if they're going to travel to Seret and see whether they can extend the Seret camp to place all the people there. What happened? In the morning, they went to Brunner, and Brunner came into the room and they said to them, tonight is going to start the deportation. And in order, you should not be able to notify your people, you are going to be locked up here.
Jews caught all over Slovakia were herded into the Serej concentration camp. Ernest Stern was deported to Serej together with Rabbi Weissmandl.
We were standing on the Ulvaroshi Bahnhof, and Sir Michelberg called all the young people together. He said, young people come together. You know, the Germans were walking right around all the time, and they kept on bringing more and more and more people which they caught on the street and from hideouts and so on. So he said, young people, you should know you're going to Auschwitz and you're going to the gas chambers. Anybody who is able should jump off the trains. Then I said to Rabbi Weissmandl, I've got 3 hacksaws blades here. Give them to me, he said. And we were standing all around it, the Germans shouldn't see us. He took it, broke it in half, and gave me back for a half. The other half he puts in his pocket. The other 2 he shared out to the other young people. Try to cut yourself out of the wagons and jump whatever you can. At night we were taken to Seret. In the morning, in early hours of the morning, we arrived in Seret, and we were put into barracks, yeah? His family was already there. They were caught in Nitra. I saw him over the yard running once, and even then, once when we met in the backyard, he said, spring, and whoever could jump, spring. Don't fool yourself. You're not going to any other camps. You're not going to stay. You're going to Auschwitz. Leave your families and jump.
It was discussed around the table at home how to jump out from a wagon, from a going wagon. That was like discussed how to do it. You take a belt and you hang it out at a little window, and you hang it out the window, and you step into the belt, and you hold the other end, and then when you let go, you jump in the direction of the train. That was a round table discussion.
When we came, I was already in Auschwitz, in the Zigeuner block, in the A-Lager, and I wanted to hear anybody. My brother was caught, my father was caught. No, nobody has seen him. Thank God for this. Nobody has been caught. And Michelberg, yes, Weissmandl was in that transport, and he jumped. And Gysi Fleischmann, she was deported, I think, in our transport. But how could you were locked into a wagon, you came to Auschwitz, went like this, and that was it.
Rabbi Weissmandl succeeded in escaping from a deportation train and managed to reach his friends. Subsequently, he arrived at the bunker built by Christian Janko Provaznik, where the Gelis family was already hiding. Ruth Gelis remembers Weissmandl's arrival.
Natalie went to pick him up, and they were working the whole night. They walked, they looked like farmers. They took all kind of tools what the farmer worked with, and they walked. And they came, it was 3 in the morning, I remember, when he arrived. He was very sick. You know, my father was in the same wagon with my son, and he said, your father went.
In the same wagon traveled the whole family of Rabbi Weissmandl. When he decided to jump out, he decided to leave his family, his wife, children, and other relatives.
My friends, I beg you, find Kastner, give him money, gold, anything, to save my dear ones from the gas chambers of Auschwitz.
When the broken Weissmandl wrote these words addressed to Switzerland, the people he loved were already dead. Few could know better than him that his wife and 5 children had no chance of surviving the selection.
He wanted to save the whole Europe, and he couldn't save his family. Very tragic.
From the end of September 1944, almost 14,000 Jews were deported from Slovakia. Thousands of others were murdered in the mountains around Banská Bystrica after the failed uprising. The last surviving Jews on Slovak territory were hiding in bunkers. Without the help of many ordinary Slovaks such as Natalie, not a single Jew would have survived in the bunkers. People like Janko Provazník, who, in the bunker adjoining his house, hid Rabbi Weissmandl and 16 other Jews, risked their lives every day to save strangers about whose religion they knew nothing.
The bunker was actually a washroom, which was separated from the house. And this washroom was leaning onto a sort of a rock or a mountain or something. It was a room rather small. We were there 17 people. So in order to be able to sleep there, we made shelves on both sides. And we slept on the shelves, three people to a shelf.
With the passage of time, the Jews hiding in bunkers throughout Slovakia were uncovered and caught. Henry Friedman fell victim to one of the searches.
After 4 weeks, October 28, they catched us in the bunker and they took us. And it didn't help nothing, even we had Aryan false papers, because they had that night when the razzia went on, they told to take everybody, even non-Jews, because they figured a lot of partisans will come to Pressburg. So they took us in, even with the false papers, and once we in, they find out that the papers aren't worth nothing. And November the 3rd, I was already in Auschwitz, very fast.
Even under these circumstances, Juraj Reveš attempted to revive the Jewish underground.
Pomalu se utvoril taký malý kruh lidí, ktorí se nebáli jít na ulic večer a tak dále a nevypadali židovsky, jako já jsem taky nevypadal, moje žena taky ne. A jsme začali se nějako organizovat a organizovali jsme pomoc falešnými papírami a hlavně, co nejhlavnější bylo, peníze rozdávat, aby lidé, kteří byli skovaní, mohli zaplatit svým ochráncům. Fleischmannova, Gysi a doktor Kováč byli hledaní gestapem. Fleischmannovu chytili, ale Kováč nějak unikl do podzemí a nebyl kontakt s touto skupinou, která vlastně říkalo se jej, že to je vedlejší vláda. Jediné spojení bylo, že přišel ke mně Kastner z Budapeštu a povídal mi, že má nákladní vůz a povedal, že jde s tím do Vídně a tak dále a že to je bezpečné a do Švýcarska. A žádal mě, abych taky šel, ale já jsem řekl, já nepůjdu. Já jsem tam chtěl zůstat v Bratislavě.
Kastner came because they wanted Weissmandl. She said, I come with you, but the whole bunker has to come with me. I don't let them out. So they provided us with, they came a few soldiers with a big one, and we walked out, and they say, so many Jews are still alive? How many were we? 60.
After 3 weeks, a few months before the end of the war, Kastner's convoy reached the Swiss border. Weissmandl was greeted by the representatives of some of the Swiss Jewish organizations he corresponded with from the onset of the war. Hermann Landau, the secretary of the so-called Sternbuch Rescue Committee in Montreux, met him as well.
I met him only when he came, when he attacked me. He really hit me. I was running around the kitchen, he ran after me. Around the table, he ran after me and hit me with his fist. Why didn't you do more? Of course, he suffered very much of the whole situation. But his main suffering was because he left his family.
The Second World War ended on May the 8th, 1945. From the Jewish population of all of Europe, only 1/3 survived. Out of 90,000 Jewish citizens of the Slovak state, 18,000 lived to see the end of the war. Rabbi Weissmandl was one of them. Arthur Friedman was hidden by a Christian family until the end of the war.
And Sunday morning we saw through the window that the Germans are leaving. They are leaving. And in the afternoon we were liberated. In the first day we didn't go out. We stayed in the adjoining room. We heard Židáci už vystrkujú hlavy. There were very few people. I don't know whether there were 10 or 15 Jews in a town where there were a few thousand people. And Židáci už vystrkujú hlavy. It was dangerous. But that's how I survived.
Josef Brody, a former student at the Nitra Yeshiva, survived Auschwitz and other camps.
After the war, we came home, and those anti-Semites, they were still there, and they said, Viac prišli ako išli. Many more came back than went. And they didn't like it because some of them had to give back whatever they had taken. And I decided a few months later that I go back to the Nitra Yeshiva. I was in close contact with some survivors of the yeshiva, and I went back and we started building up the Nitra Yeshiva again. We decided, and Rabbi Weissman decided for us, that we will move either to Palestine at that time, to Israel, or to the United States.
Jewish survivors of the Holocaust wanted to leave blood-soaked Europe as soon as possible. The majority attempted to reach Palestine, the Jewish homeland of their dreams, then under British rule. The British Navy, however, intercepted refugee ships. Passengers were arrested on the spot as illegal immigrants. Impoverished refugees, survivors of German concentration camps, spent years until 1948 behind British barbed wire in internment camps. That is why Rabbi Weissmandl decided to transfer the Nitra Yeshiva to America, despite the bitterness he felt towards American Jewry. Sigmund Faust escaped to the United States before the war. He knew Rabbi Weissmandl from the early 1920s.
You know, his recollection in the very beginning was concentrated on the American Jews, that they did nothing. I told you he was laying in bed, you know, and hammering on his fists, and he was accusing, like, you see, I felt I was sitting there listening to him, and he threw all these things at me, like I would be responsible, I would represent the American Jews, you know. He told all his bitterness, and he was crying like a child, and screaming at me. Meaning, I was sitting there, and I was already doing the war in America, so I was part of the Jewish community who was guilty.
William Levy, who by miracle survived being shot in stomach by a Slovak SS guard, today lives in the Nitra Yeshiva in Mount Kisco, New York.
First yeshiva came, we've been housed in New Jersey, in Somerville, New Jersey, a small place, but it was too small. It was only a temporary place. We looked, we went by car to Long Island, to everywhere to look, and many months we looked until we came to this place. I was the driver of the car. He looked around and observed the place and saw right away this is a place where no neighbors can approach us. It's completely isolated. He was looking for isolation, and he found it. And he felt as a duty to write his memory, because he always said there will be time will come that people wouldn't believe what happened, wouldn't believe. They would say, maybe you're crazy. This is only stories. This is exaggerated stories. So he felt it's an obligation to me to write down what happened, was what could have been done, was what not done, for the generation to know. And that cost him his life. Because while he was writing, he was reliving everything. And his heart just couldn't take it.
Unsere Eltern und Kinder, unsere Geschwister und Brüder. Und ich habe probiert, auch viel zu machen. Du, der mit ihnen. In den 2 Jahren sind gewesen sachweise Tischen, in der mit ihnen so tätig, so wie der Tisch. Sachheadtables sind gewesen, die wir schon rausgesehen haben. Wo man gehe, ist der Tasch, wie der Headtable. Notabilitäten sind gesessen, für das Präsident für die United States umgefangen wieder runter. Und ich habe probiert zu schreien, ach, hey, meine Israel, jüdische Brüder, jüdische Schwestern, Maschachten, 13.000 und 15.000 Tuch, Mamas mit den Kindern, Männer mit den Weibern. Und es ist eine Frage von Geld, und es ist eine Frage von ein bisschen Einfluss. Es ist eine Frage, das Aufheben in der Stimme, und es ist eine Frage, das ein bisschen aufmachen, die Tasche. Es ist unbeschreiblich. Es lässt doch nicht sagen, wie die Ohren stumm gewesen, wie die Ohren taub gewesen ist. Ich lebe doch jetzt schon 8,5 Jahre in der Medina. Ich kann mir vorstellen, das Schweißtuch, das gute Leben, das gute Essen, das gute Vergnügen, in den guten Geschäften in den Krieg, wie sie im Krieg gedeihen, wie sie in der Medina gewesen sind. Nur kein Ohr ist nicht gewesen, verdient. Fürchterliches Geschrei. In das Geschrei, das Gewein, sind 4-mal, sind 5-mal, sind 8-mal 2000 Juden. Wie viel gefasst hat, die Mord, alle. Weiber und Kinder, Männer und Weiber, die Spuche zusammengenommen, 65 und 35, eine Fasse in einem Mal. Geschrien haben die letzten Schma Israel zum Rebäuischen Eulam. Und man hat es nicht gehört. Man hat nicht einmal gehört das Verlangen des Pusete, das Verlangen, was kein Geld kostet, zu zertrümmern in der Zeit, wenn die amerikanische und englische Luftflotte die unbeherrschte Macht gehabt hat über Ungarn. Es hat doch nicht keiner gewagt, aufzusteigen. Einzigen Weg, ein Weg ist gewesen, auf dem er geführt hat, die Deportierung. Kein anderer ist nicht mehr vorhanden gewesen. Kein Ausweg war mehr vorhanden. Einen Weg zu bombardieren. Das soll nicht kennen, 4 herein in die Mordfabrik. In den Ungarn hat man es gekannt, Hargen in 15.000 Juden tot. Das ist möglich gewesen. Jede Zeit ist eine Bombe gefallen, ist eine Störung gewesen, ist jemand gegangen, in Gewein, wenn es hätten gegangen, statt politische Menschen, 200 Tribunen hätten gefallen, hier im Luftministerium oder wo vor der Fies, und hätten gebeten und geweint, wenn 200 Jüdis hätten gegangen, hätten geweint. Adoini, mein Herr, meine Schwester geht mal an, meine Mama geht mal verbrennen. Ein Bombe kann helfen. In das Jahr ist gewesen ein Wahljahr, in dem Jahr ist ein Election-Jahr gewesen. Wir sind doch schon alle amerikanische Citizens oder Arab-Citizens. Man weiß doch, was man kann in einem Election-Jahr in Amerika alles erreichen. Eine Bombe, eine Station, kann man nicht erreichen, hat man nicht erreichen können, weil man nicht gegangen ist. Weil der den Brief bekommen hat, wenn er hat oben gesehen, Baruch Hashem, hat ihn der Eckle so weitergegriffen, dass er den Brief nicht gelesen hat. Er hat gar nicht angefangen, den Brief zu lesen, wer Baruch Hashem hat. In ich Weinheit, in ich Schreiheit.
You heard a unique, authentic recording of Rabbi Weissmandel's opinions. Most of them are to be found in his memories. The book was published posthumously and named Min HaMetzar, which could be translated as Cry from the Depths.
Yeah, I remember the day, yeah. A friend of me called me from the hospital. He says, it's the end. I said, what? He said, it's the end. And he hung up. I knew what he meant. He said, I remember he said, it's the bitter end.
Rabbi Weissmandel passed away in America at the age of 54. His book is still being published, however only in the original Hebrew. It contains many strong accusations of the Free World representatives. Because Weissmandl applied his charge of murderous silence before the horror of the Holocaust also to some figures of the Zionist leadership, his book of memories, and with it all his wartime efforts, were labeled as anti-Zionist propaganda. The unique coherence of the Bratislava Working Group, which brought together the representatives of all religious and political streams of modern Judaism, has never again been repeated. Gissi Fleischmann, without whom the working group would never come into existence, was murdered immediately after her arrival at Auschwitz. Today a street in Jerusalem is named in her memory. Oskar Neumann, a Slovak Zionist leader, saw the end of the war in Theresienstadt. He then moved to Israel to build a new homeland. Rabbi Armin Frieder, a religious Zionist, escaped a deportation train at the very end of the war. He passed away in Bratislava in 1946 after a gallbladder operation. Willy Fürst, the treasurer of the working group, was caught in the autumn of 1944 after leaving his bunker to help other Jews. Nothing is known about his subsequent fate. Tibor Kovac, who never wanted to be Jewish, survived the war in the underground. He remained in Slovakia. In 1952, during the communist trials of the so-called Zionist Conspiracy Center, he committed suicide. Andrej Steiner, the architect of the Slovak labor camps, was saved by peasants in the mountains after the uprising. He is the last living member of the working group of Bratislava. The president of the first Slovak state, Dr. Tisser, for whom there is a monument in today's Slovakia, was tried and executed as a war criminal. The same fate met the advisor of his government, Dieter Wislitzny, and in the end Adolf Eichmann as well. Only Alois Brunner lives, or until recently lived, in the capital of Syria, Damascus, under government protection. The mass murder of French, Greek and Slovak Jews has never been put on trial. Why? That perhaps is a different history.